Hello and welcome into episode 15 of Looking Up with Laird here on Sorare TV. I'm Andrew Laird from Sorare Data, joined as always by Sam Tighe and Harry Trades of Ranks FC and the Harry Trades YouTube channel, respectively. Gentlemen, today we were going to do an MLS show, and just like the Premier League one, Sam picked one from that league. So I don't know if he'll lead us off there, but MLS starting back up this weekend, and so what better time to find players that are looking up? For full disclosure, I made a big MLS list of players on Sorare Data back in October, and I said to myself and to anybody who saw this list, these guys will be more expensive in February, and they're not. But maybe they're looking up now. Who knows? Maybe we'll see some guys on that list on today's edition on the Looking Up with Laird Sorare Data watch list, which is linked in the description below and updated a day before our videos go live. Sam, I'm going to lead off with you today, if only to get this non-MLSer out of the way, unless you decide that he's actually your second choice, and then now it's just chaos.
Well, if you want to get him out of the way, that's fine. The irony, of course, is that I was the one that suggested an MLS special, and then didn't even follow my own rules. So it wasn't even like it was Harry's idea or something. Right. I actually suggested this, so my bad. So let's get this one out of the way, shall we?
Harry was all in too, and
Harry was. Turns out Harry was just better at this than I am. But let's start off with Tighe, 27-year-old midfielder over at Benfica, who I think is basically the big beneficiary of Enzo Fernandez's move to Chelsea. The fact that he's in this team, didn't see it coming. He probably didn't see it coming either. The manager, Roger Schmidt, definitely didn't see it coming. I don't think any of us were really prepared for this or ready for this. And I'd imagine that if Enzo Fernandez had joined Chelsea on, like, let's say January 15th or something, they probably would have used the money or some of the money to buy somebody else. But because it happened the very, like, in the last second, the last minute, obviously you then have to make do for the rest of the season with what you've got. And I've given it a little bit of time to see how it all shakes out. And it looks like Tighe is the player they're going to run with next to Florentino Luis in midfield for the rest of the season. He's put together, I think it's 4 starts in a row now. I'm a bit mad at him for dropping that 83 while I was kind of waiting and sitting on him because, you know, the 3 scores before that, they're prime looking up territory. You know, he's ramping up to something. I wanted to get in before he dropped a big one. And then they beat Boavista and he dropped an 83. So the floor has responded in kind, but his last sales still pretty reasonable. If memory serves right, he's not actually like a holding or central midfielder. He was more of an attacking presence. That he's kind of been pushed backwards. Obviously, Florentino is so good at the defensive work that you can kind of play anyone next to him and it's fine, particularly against some of the weaker sides in Portugal. But looking at his career, he's sometimes come back with sort of 9 or 10 goals in a season. And so that would suggest that he was more attacking, but he's very much part of the central midfield too here. He's also had a super weird career where he's like ended up in like Turkey and Croatia and all sorts, but he's kind of finally settling down. There has been a jump, obviously. You can see right around the end of January, which is obviously where Enzo leaves. His importance is elevated, but his price hasn't really moved over the course of February, despite the fact that he's put together 4 really good scores, or, well, 2 really good ones and 2 solid ones. So if you are out there and you, like me, have been looking at these Benfica players all season, looking at these Benfica stacks and looking at these scores and just wishing that you had some semblance of it, some piece of the pie, okay, he's probably not going to be as good as João Mario. Okay, he's not Flo Luis. But if you want to get your hands on one part of it and be part of it, then Tighe this is the open door, and this is your opportunity, I think.
So that last part that you were just describing, that you want a piece of Benfica, but not necessarily to pay all up, made me instantly think of one of your favorites, Wilmar Barrios, that Zenit have these superstar players in Malcolm and Wendell and Douglas Santos. And you're like, man, I would really like one of those, but like, I can't quite get there. And Barrios is like so underappreciated because he just crushes this matrix. but everybody's just so drawn to the other guys. And granted, their scoring is higher, but the gap in scoring is much bigger. Is much smaller than the gap in pricing. And it's like immediately came to mind because true, like we've seen some of these Benfica stacks that are just like smashing it. Is it Grimaldo who is collecting the signature cards of everyone else on the team?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, so like that actually just like heightened it of like people stacking Benfica. But yeah, they have like huge scores. Obviously, they had Enzo for a very short time, but he was part of these huge scores. And João Mario feels like he has a decisive every single game.
Penalties, mate. Penalties.
It's I don't even want to go down that road because I had one at some point and was like, oh no, this guy is old. I'm fine. But yeah. I think this is a very overlooked strategy of finding somebody who like, and it's not like Chiquinho is bad and he just like happens to be on this team. Like he is scoring well now. Obviously, we're doing this off of the back of his highest score in a while, although it looks like he had a little 91 against that must have been Conference or Europa?
Champions League group stage.
Group stage. Right? It was. Oh, yeah. Yep. So obviously the scores are there. A little disappointing that he didn't wait one more week for us since you obviously were there. But yeah, I think this is a very overlooked strategy of just get someone else from the team and pay a lot less. I did notice here that he does have some forward cards, and based on the scoring, you probably don't want one, or at least it doesn't score as well as the midfielder cards. I guess that's still pretty good for a forward. You tend not to see a 40 AA from forwards much, but actually, that seems perfectly reasonable. Excuse me. So if you get stuck with a forward card, so be it. But yeah, I like this call a lot. And like you said, the price kind of moved up a little bit when Enzo left, but these scores kind of feel like it justifies a higher price.
Definitely. Yeah. The price looks good to me. So yeah, Chiquinho, I mean, I don't think I'm going to go there myself. I've got my written list of priorities that I'm now rigidly sticking to because of the last year of just ignoring it all and me never really getting towards what I actually want to do. But yeah, I mean, I was looking at this and I was like, I could just deviate, but now I have a little doctrine to refer to, so I'm not allowed to do it. I've banned myself.
That's why I don't write anything down, or else I might actually stick to it. So can't make a panic purchase if it's not written down. Yeah, that's a fun one, and I don't know what to say about this haircut, so I'm not going to say anything. Harry, we're here to talk about Major League Soccer, so can you please get us on topic here?
Of course. It'll be my pleasure to introduce my first MLS pick of the video, and that is Cole Bassett, currently playing for the Colorado Rapids in the MLS. Feels like he's been around for ages, and if you look at his sort of all-time sort of Sorare scores, he kind of has. I think a couple of his first games are like game week 70 something, maybe 80 for the Rapids. He then went and moved to Feyenoord in the Eredivisie, went on loan to Fortuna Sittard, and the whole Eredivisie situation just didn't really work out for him as planned. We've got a number 10 here that like I always try and do. I try and find my set piece takers. He is one of them. And what kind of struck me on this, I mean, you're gonna, I'm sure, mention it, is one, the L15 of 27, which just looks absolutely beautiful. Under 23 until 2026, and for the price, and I'm talking limited and even rare. I mean, I don't know what the super is at, really. Last public sales was 0.177, so that feels very cheap considering the rares are 0.15, 1 month average. Yeah, there we go, 0.45. That makes a bit more sense. I feel like he could be like priced at the lower end of those sort of set piece taking under 23 players, midfielder wise, that we could sort of see smashing. Like Santiago Rodriguez looks to be obviously back at New York. I imagine he's going to be, heavily involved in those sort of those under 23, top tier midfielders. And I think Bassett at this price comes in at like probably one of the, if not the cheapest, under 23 midfielder. This sort of, going to be at the heart of his team. He's come back to the MLS. Didn't really work out for him in Europe, which, you know, can either go one or two ways. You know, he can look at it as something that's, you know, a negative in his career, or he can use it as fuel to sort of try and kick on again and have another go at it. He's 21. Like, he's still stupidly young. It's not as if like he's 24, 25 and has failed at that point. He's still got bags of years left in his career. And I think if he can really smash this season with the Rapids, I don't see why he can't have another shot at it. I mean, it might not be the easiest or the most logical move for him, knowing what he's already done in Europe. But I think you could have a really, really cool asset for a year in the MLS in Cole Bassett.
Bassett's kind of those, like you said, like he's been around forever, like 17 super rares for a guy who is still only 21. It feels a little like Yari Verscheren, like, not to compare. That's where the comparisons end, by the way, between Bassett. I don't want to start going down that road. But I do remember when he moved, it just felt a little weird because he wasn't like a locked in star at Colorado before. And so it was kind of like this move, like, oh, okay, like it's a step up. And then he wasn't really playing. And it was like, okay, if you're not really playing in MLS, you're probably not going to play for Feyenoord either. And the loan didn't help a whole lot either. But he's back in MLS now. And like you said, like, there's plenty of time to essentially remake whatever allowed him the move in the first place. And so I don't know what I don't fully expect set pieces, because like Jack Price is there and he always took a few, but Colorado is kind of like up in the air at this point. They have a new goalkeeper too with Marco Illich from Kortrijk, and there's always moving pieces in Major League Soccer anyway. But like, at some point, Bassett was a good enough prospect that Feyenoord called and said, "We want you," and went and grabbed him. And again, like you said, under 23 until 2026. And so there's plenty of time for this to work out. And I expect him to start. So I don't think that's any worry. And yeah, L15 of 27, which probably not moving much, regardless of what he does in the first few games, because it's not like it's packed with DMPs. So yeah, that's all. He
also took penalties for the Rapids.
Okay, there we go.
Looking in that 2021 season in the MLS, he scored a penalty against Minnesota, and then just judging off set pieces. Yeah, Jack Price seems to take them from the right mostly, and then I'm just looking at.
If Diego Rubio not take some penalties or something, is he not a?
Let me check if Rubio might not have been on the field at that point. Let me check. In that specific game, Rubio started, came off 63rd minute. Yeah, so maybe he scored.
The mix, at least.
Yeah, he'd be in the mix.
Yeah. But, I think you could just do a very elementary, what did he do when he was in Colorado? And if you look at these scores, that's warranted to think that even if he matched these again, based on the current price, and certainly the L15, like, that's worth looking after.
5 goals and 3 assists in that 2021 season, but that's only with 24 starts.
Yeah.
And a 69-minute per game average. So, like you said, he wasn't sort of as nailed and as sort of consistent as players can be, if that makes sense. And this is a player 2 years, he was 19 at that point, really. So, like, let's hope that sort of 2-year maturities, away in Europe has sort of done him good, and hopefully he can sort of, start the season really, really well.
Yeah. Shout out John Nellis here with the sale.
He has a super as well. John still has a super.
Wow.
I think so. Yeah. It was when he bought he bought a couple of supers, MLS supers back in the day. Who's the left back that moved to the second Bundesliga? I'm trying to think.
Kevin
Bello. Yeah. It was Bello, Bassett, and somebody else. It's like a little trio he had.
There's someone at Wolfsburg, isn't there? That was Paredes.
Yeah, that is Kevin Paredes. Yeah.
Well,
Bassett's he's done that move now, and he's come back from it. So you're good.
Yeah. Yeah. He's got it out of his system. We've all been there.
Yeah, no, Bassett will be a really interesting one because, like, if he got back to those scores, like, he's probably one of the better under 23 midfielders this summer.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's as simple as that. Like, the number of great under 23 midfielders in the summer is short, and so
yeah, it's Puig. It's basically Puig, Santiago Rodriguez. I'm struggling already to name the next couple.
surely there's some.
Fuentes still under 23?
Cifuentes, yeah, he is. Yeah, he's 23 right now. Yeah, you could probably put him in there. He ages out in 2024, to be fair.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just because I only know this because I did a podcast on Tuesday, so I've not got like crazy MLS knowledge.
Yeah, the one guy that I would love to see is, and I know, actually, Harry, I don't know if you still have this card. I can't imagine you sold it, but I would love to see Ryotaro Araki from Kashima.
I do have him. Yeah, I do have him. Didn't even get off the bench on the weekend, which was very disappointing.
Didn't get off the bench.
Yeah, didn't get off the bench, which was horrible. Santiago Moreno's another one for Portland. Facundo Torres. There is a few, don't get me wrong. There is a few, but I do think Bassett could be in that top 5 quite comfortably.
I mean, even if he's top 10, like, that's probably enough during the summer. So,
yeah, for sure.
And there's another guy actually that maybe we'll talk about in a little bit who is also on that list. We'll see. Sam, who you got today?
Okay, MLS time.
Now that you're
MLS?
following the rules.
MLS time. Okay, I'm hoping for a bounce back season for Jimmy Chara of the Portland Timbers. They'll just be hoping for just a whole bounce back season of their own as a team, because 2022 kind of ended quite badly for them. They missed the playoffs for the first time since 2016, and they've only been around like 10, 12 years or so. So that's it's quite a devastating blow, really. I mean, it does happen to everybody. You know, this is Major League Soccer. Like, teams rise and fall like crazy, and in the interest of balancing the argument, obviously they're great rivals. Seattle Sounders also missed the playoffs, and they've obviously had extreme recent success. So I'd say that whole top left corner of the USA was down pretty bad in October, and they're all hoping for it all to get a lot better. Portland's response to this was quite interesting. They signed Evander, a playmaker from Midtjylland in Denmark. His price is not fun. He's not fun at all. He's about 0.7 for a rare at the moment, and that makes the expectations on him pretty clear. I know that he's 24, obviously coming in as a designated player, as a new shiny object, but this is an extremely expensive player. He's not far off Carlos Hill, and he's not far off double Hani Mukhtar. So it's basically unattainable. So I looked immediately outside of Evander, and in this case, it's quite literally, because I think Jimmy Chara will play on the wing, and Evander will play as the 10. So he'll play just outside him. And Chara is a player that I've seen a few times and I think is really good. His scores dropped off horrendously last season, in line with Portland Timbers' kind of decline. But halfway through the season, he's looking quite good. It's all green. I love the fact that he's a high floor player in terms of attack as a forward card, because he's got good AA. But obviously the decisives dipped away and it kind of just fizzled out. So I'm hoping that the Timbers rise as a unit. The team is much better overall, and that Chara's scores kind of respond to that, and he kind of gets back on that decisive trail. He's still very important to them. Obviously, Evander's the new DP, but I think because of some of the contract work they did in the summer, Chara actually ended up as one of their DPs. He ended up as one of their top 3 most expensive contracts. So they're still all behind him. There's still a lot of faith in him. I love the fact that he plays with his brother, Diego, a bit deeper in midfield. That's really cool. And we'll see. We'll see. I mean, I think at this price, correct me if I'm wrong, it's have a look. It's about £100 for a rare at the moment, or something like that. Yeah, close to it. He's about half a Johnny Russell, or half a Daniel Saloy at Sporting Kansas City. He's less than half a Zardes, who's now up front for Austin. He's less than half of a Fagundes, set piece taker at Austin, that sort of thing. So it does look like quite value if you believe in a bounce back, and I think I do.
So the interesting thing about Chara is everyone with his midfielder card is trying to sell it. So just something to like look out for when you are looking for that card, because the cheapest one on the market for the forward card, 0.142 ETH. But the forward card, I do believe, scores better than the midfielder card, and oh no, it is slightly better. Okay, but it's really not that much of a difference. But like, it'll be another show at another time. But like MLS forwards versus MLS mids, like there are a lot more mids that I think can like fill the spot, Cole Bassett even, than Chara. So you mentioned, Sam, this choice to me before the show, and you were like, or I had an explanation of why Chara's scores dropped a little bit. And you're like, I don't want to hear that, because you and Harry just focus on set pieces so much, and they're not important. And anybody who needs to focus on set pieces is crazy. But I think the loss of set pieces had a little bit to do with it, because Santiago Moreno, who Harry mentioned earlier, did start taking them towards the end of the season. I think there's an expectation that Evander takes some as well, if not all of them. And that's like the only hesitancy I have on Chara. But I think you could make the counter argument that Portland will be better. I think they're set up to be better. And so these kind of like yellowish scores probably aren't going to be as consistent, meaning we'll see some more greens.
Yes, I'd certainly hope so. I mean, look, you take that chart there and you just like split it in half, left and right, and it does accurately represent Portland's season, as well as the fact that he may have been taken off or lost a few set pieces. By the end of the season, I think he'd taken the third most set pieces because his numbers are dwindled there. I've watched a few highlight reels of Evander, and that guy takes a penalty. So I think we can absolutely expect him to hoover up quite a lot of that volume. And that in itself, I accept, can be a negative to those around them. And I don't know if that's, the situation maybe with Carlos Hill, where, it's just like a black hole for all volume, and everybody else around him struggles. If that's the case, it's bad. But I'd also sort of think that a rising tide here can lift all boats, as the saying goes. And if Portland are better and Evander makes Portland better, then Chara by proxy gets better. And it's kind of like it's not the same because he's a bigger part of it, but like the argument we've just put forward with Chiquinho and Benfica and Barrios and Zenit, like if Evander can make Portland Timbers a fierce attack, one of the better attacks in MLS, you might find yourself wanting a piece of it. Maybe not Evander, but a piece of it. And Chara will be one of those.
I like that part. The other thing that I wanted to mention before on the Evander part is I think part of the reason his price is so high is because he's such a low minted player, like 23 rares, 3 super rares. It's just really not that many cards, particularly since we're used to having so many MLS cards because they've been on the platform for years. Obviously 228 for Chara. And again, it's just he still has a bunch of those midfielder cards out there. So just something to be wary of. But yeah, I think that's a reasonable comparison in terms of the type of player that you want for a team that is expected to improve from last year.
Yeah, I mean, you can't always have the evidence in front of you. Sometimes you have to try and project, which is part of this process, part of this show. And so I guess I'm hoping for better for Jimmy. Like I think he's a really good player, and he ended the season really badly. So I hope for better for him. How does Evander's price compare to Cucho Hernandez based on limited mint MLS players here? Because they've been pumping out the Cucho cards, but he's still, I guess, by MLS standards, pretty low mint.
Yeah, well, yeah, he's only at 48. Cucho does have the U23 kind of premium a little bit there, especially because he's a forward, although it does expire this summer, and so there is that. But you're right, they did blast those out.
48 already.
Yeah.
That's genuinely in about 3 months.
Yeah, I mean, the first one was October. Somehow that was the number 2. Can that be right? I guess it could be. That is a lot. You're right.
Dang. Yeah.
And the last one sold. Oh, that's a secondary market. But yeah, it's just something to pay attention to. It's not like we. Yep. I mean, we fully expect to have Evander cards when the MLS 2023 cards come out. So And I don't think they're going to be hesitant to blast those out too, because it's a player that a lot of people want to get their hands on.
Yep.
So trades, final one.
Yeah, so my final pick is a certain Paxton Pomical of FC Dallas. Yeah, this one, I'll be honest, like it does from a standpoint of like, okay, I'm looking for midfielders to plug into my U23 lineup in this summer, right? Pomical doesn't come into that frame of mind for me. He's of the stupidly cheap, probably won't have an excessive high L15 ever sort of category to where you can plug him into cap mode quite effectively. Like he's a cap 240, cap 220 probably player who, from some games he might get you a 40 AA, another game he's just going to get you nothing. And it's just kind of that's kind of just what you get with Paxton. If you watch him play in real life, like there's parts of me that think that he could go higher. Like he's a really, really energetic, he's physical, he's got a great left foot, defensively really, really sound for a midfielder, for a number 8. He's box to box. He probably clearly doesn't get enough decisive to really put him into that, I want you under 23 midfielder category, right? Which could come. Like he has players around him, Jesus Ferreira, Paul Ariola and Alan Velasco. There's a crazy front three there at FC Dallas. And, Pomical is that sort of late arriving midfielder really on paper. He just doesn't pose as much of a goal threat as you'd like. He is capable of assists. Like he does try his best to sort of feed those players, when he's on the ball. But ultimately, you're basically getting him for his defensive work in that midfield. With the sprinkle of, he might get you an assist now and again, really. But I'm looking at a £3.21 limited price. Just seems a bit crazy-ish. And he's under 23 until 2024. So it's not as if he expires in the summer under 23 wise. Like I said, I wouldn't really be buying him for under 23s. But if you're like really struggling for a midfielder for whatever reason, your main, Rui Pui gets injured first game of the season, whatever it is, like, he's a sort of, a backup under 23 option, but a sort of a cap 240, cap 220, like primary option, I would say, for the summer. Because I just can't see his L15 really getting that high ever.
So I have one.
So you got one there, Laird? I noticed that immediately.
40.
So this one's up to 9%. This is proof how long I've had this card, and I've won 2 rewards with it. However, one was Luis Diaz, so that was a nice.
I like it, and Machino
paid off. Yeah. So I love that you mentioned this whole thing that like you're probably not like throwing him in as your top option in U23, because back when I bought him, that was my plan. I was like, oh yeah, he's summer U23 mid, like he'll be fine, and he wasn't. And then you mentioned how his L15 is not that high, and so he's really good for cap mode, and he is currently in my cap 220 rare team for this weekend.
Nice, love it.
But Dallas is kind of a weird team. They have, like you mentioned, they have like a pretty good front line that should be able to put up some goals. And I think that they're probably going to take up most of the decisives on the team. But at some point they do trickle down, and Pomical is like a pretty good player. He is box to box, so it's not like he's going to be so far away from the attacking box or the attacking third that he will never get a decisive. Like he will be involved. But you're right. There's nothing like super exciting about him, but we have a number of competitions now where you literally just don't need super exciting players. And so I was actually curious here if his like home away splits are really high. So he averages like 44.9 away, 47 at home, which is, a 6-point total different, 3 on each side. And so even if you want to play that game when it comes to cap modes that, when he has a good matchup, I mean, they open home against Minnesota, which is actually a pretty good matchup for them. And then it's MLS. So, you never know what you get out of the Galaxy, but that's back-to-back home games to start the season, which seems like a perfectly fine place to play a player with an L15 of 44. And you can probably expect 49 to 55, but 50's all you need and cap 240 from each player. So
only, yeah, not even that. Really, if you've got a couple of Kim Min Jaes hanging around, yeah, split that one down. I love Pomykal. I think he's really good as a player. Like, he obviously doesn't absolutely bang on So Rare on the Matrix, but he's someone that I first watched at the Under-20 World Cup for the US, and I thought he looked brilliant. Genuinely, like such a little, like a busy little body, and the left foot, the kind of low center of gravity, the kind of all-round tenacious play. At the time, Bernardo Silva was doing a very similar thing for Man City as a number 8, and he really reminded me of Bernardo to a lesser degree, obviously, stylistically. And he's kind of caught my eye back then, 2-3 years ago, and I've been really fond of him ever since. So this is exactly the kind of player I would buy as well, because it's a pretty reasonable price. You can use him in like 8 different ways, and I like him a lot in real life, so it helps.
Mm-hmm.
I think because I don't want to blame the lack of decisives on this, but Pomykal always felt like a player who would have left by now.
Yeah.
Like Bassett is probably one that probably should have stayed and Pomykal should have left. And we kind of see the same thing with Jesus Ferreira at Dallas. Like Dallas has these weird situations where they have guys who are good enough to leave. There's always a story that like they do want to leave and then they don't necessarily go. Kind of a similar one happened, I remember, with Kellen Acosta. He wanted to go to Europe, so they traded him to Colorado, which is actually further away from Europe than Dallas. And frankly, he didn't get any closer to Europe. But he was like a young box-to-box midfielder in this mold. Like Pomykal basically took his spot when he left. And so Dallas, we know, is very good at developing these young players, and some move on. And Velasco didn't come up in their academy, but he is young and probably going to move on at some point. Mm-hmm. And so Pomykal just fits in that realm of like young players that Dallas has developed. And at some point he's going to move on. It's just a matter of whether he gets the move to Europe or potentially further away. Like as a Kellen Acosta super rare card holder, I was very happy to see him stay in Major League Soccer. But anyway, and now he's in Los Angeles again, further away from Europe. But there's nowhere else he can go that's further away, I'm pretty sure. So
true.
At least in Major League Soccer until Hawaii FC starts up. So
yeah, he's going to the A-League, man.
Yeah. I'll have to get the globe out, but that might even be closer now that I think about it. Like, is that from LA at least? It surely, I don't know. If anybody wants to drop a comment below, feel free to let us know.
All I know is
it's closer to.
I live in Europe, and it takes about 24 hours to get to Australia on a plane.
Yeah,
but I believe it's about 11 hours to get to LA.
Fair enough.
Yeah, but I am not at the southeastmost point of Europe, so is it a fair test?
Good point. I don't know. Maybe we'll look into that in another show. We'll start a new show on So Rare TV.
Geography with Laird.
Yeah. looking up the app. Anyway, thank you, gentlemen, for all of that. As a reminder to everyone, this watch list is available on So Rare Data. You can just go to the your name here and then my watch lists, and then all of the public watch lists will show up. You can probably just looking up, and it's there. We're up to 203. Which I believe I don't think we had reached 200.
No, we didn't reach 200. Yeah, that's new.
But I do know that is still less than the top. Oh my God. We are so close. So close. 14 place. More people and we will be first. So if anyone watching this has not liked this watch list, please do so that we can get the great ego boost of seeing this list at the top. As a reminder, when you do click on this list, we have the dates of when each guy was added to the list, and then you can do all the fun stuff like the prices, which don't do that. Let's go all time. Maybe they'll be up from that way. I probably don't even want to look at that either. But anyway, offers here is all of the cards that are currently on the secondary market among guys on this list, and you can sort it or filter it by scarcity, and then if any of them are on auction, which they are, go get them.
Release.
Right there, ready for you. So anyway, thank you, everybody. Again, if you haven't liked the video, if you could please do so. If you haven't subscribed to the video, we've noticed that we've actually gotten more views on these videos than there are subscribers of Sorare TV, which is always puzzling to me. So subscribe to the channel and get all the good stuff. And yeah, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week.